How long
I
you
get
been at Elevation?
I've been at Elevation for 5 years.
Okay.
Yep. Um, well, maybe just a little shy of 5 years. I kind of worked. I had this studio in Salisbury, Maryland, for a while, and I guess to like cap the story off, I when I was a junior in college back in 2006, I dropped out of school just because I was a business major and didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with that yet. I was really into the record label scene. I had a band and we toured, and it was kind of like this metal band, sort of Christian, sort of not. Um, but anyway, was doing that. Didn't love school. I loved going to, meeting people, being part of something, kind of having some sort of trajectory. But somewhere in the middle of that, I decided like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I definitely want to be in music. And so I ended up, I'll never forget it. So about August of 2006, I had decided like, all right, I'm going to drop out of school and just work for the school, save up money and look for some opportunities. So I had some friends of some friends who worked for this record label in Nashville. They needed an IT guy, and that's what I did in school to make, side money was just, and to help actually pay for going to school was do IT stuff, install smart classrooms. So I was more tech oriented. Um, so anyway, they needed an IT guy at the record label, and I was like, oh man, this is my win. So I was already not taking classes. I ended up proposing to my girlfriend, quitting my band, quitting my job, and moving out to Nashville, all within after these talks, within the span of like a week or so in September, or kind of like around the beginning of October. It was the most insane week of my life, to make such a quick shift. But I felt like, really honestly, I felt like God was just giving me a way to see an open door and kind of walk through it. And it didn't pan out the way I thought, which was the greatest thing. I mean, 6 months after moving there, the record label went bankrupt. I had become the IT director for the label. I was one of the last employees to officially get let go. And this was a major label. Like they had some big artists, and it was basically like a Sony Red distro imprint kind of thing. So I was kind of broke, engaged. My then fiance, now wife of 12 years, moved out there, and to basically support me following my dream. And I started just doing some IT work around town, and eventually got a gig landed a gig building studios for, I mean, all kinds of artists, a lot of country producers, a lot of country artists, some Christian singer-songwriters, producers. So I would install, kind of use my background and my music knowledge, and kind of got into engineering. And it just kind of blew up. Like I started installing studios for people, and then that turned into being like building custom Pro Tools rigs, which turned into assisting the assistant on big sessions. And then I just kind of fell in love with the studio atmosphere, and kind of merged the love of music and the love of tech, and got into engineering, into Pro Tools, and just learned as much as I could. Ended up, a couple years after that, my wife and I felt like we needed to be near family for a season, because we were very newly married and just a lot of life change, and kind of wanted to create like a good vibe and be near family a little bit. So we moved back to Maryland, and I started a studio and just freelancing. So I did that for about, I want to say, 6 or 7 years. And through that, I met Mac, at Elevation, Mac Brock, and he was he was one of the main worship leaders, and he was overseeing all production. And I had produced a record for a really good buddy of mine, and we met this guy through the label named Malcolm, and he connected me and Mac, and started doing some work for Elevation from afar. just mixing stuff for YouTube for them. And I had been kind of simultaneously following Elevation outside of working with them and following them online and watching. They had what was called then the Elevation Network, where they would broadcast their live worship experience. And I would tune into that before I would go to church at my church, where I kind of oversaw some small volunteer teams and stuff. But anyway, just started a connection with them and really doing more and more with Mac and the team there. And they had some needs, and I ended up coming down and engineering a project for them and then doing a live recording for them. And it just kind of blew up out of there. And eventually my wife came down with me, and we ended up kind of interviewing over a course of like a weekend, and they had offered me a job, and it was just crazy. God like orchestrated it all, put it all together. And in May of 2014, we moved down here, and I started working there full time. Kind of closed the studio, set aside the freelance engineering for a while, and just kind of dove right in.
Man. So you were there when Mac and James and Lance and all of them were still there?
Yeah. Yep. So
cool.
Mac's one of my best friends. He's a brother. He was basically, I guess you would say, my boss, and I worked with him. So he would produce stuff. I would just engineer and edit. I had a lot of live recording background, but prior to Elevation, and they were doing lots of, in the worship world, live records are kind of a thing. And so he just needed help in that and wanted me to take it and run with it and try to make it better. And while he could focus on the bigger picture, production, music side of things. And yeah, we just kind of teamed up and was hanging around Mac, Lance, all those guys. James, did a record with him. The first like full record I did at Elevation was Wake Up the Wonder. I guess the first project was Only King Forever, doing a bunch of stuff from my studio in Maryland. But then, yeah, we did also this like little EP thing called the Raised to Life EP. And then Wake Up the Wonder, James was on that record. And then we did Here's in Heaven after that. And then a bunch more since.
Wake Up the Wonder was the one in the Charlotte Arena, right?
Yep, that was the first time Elevation had ever done anything in an arena.
Yeah, I was at that with my wife.
Were you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was insane. That was just learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot. And yeah, I didn't go home for like 2 days during that, and just ended up sleeping on the there was this, I rented all this gear from Nashville. We literally flew a guy from Charlotte to Nashville. He rented a box truck, picked up the rig from Rack and Roll in Nashville, and drove it overnight. We tested it the night before loading into the arena. And we were in the arena. We did a setup day and then a show day. And nothing went as planned. We were there way later than we thought we would be. I think it was 4 a.m. the day of the show was by the time we actually started legit sound checks.
Wow.
Everything was just running behind, from rigging to stage setup to backline. And it was just, the rig I rented was crazy. Like, I had a bunch of problems with some things on it, and some cabling, not their fault, but it was all analog, 200 feet of analog snake, and into the small room with no HVAC. And so I had 96 channels of preamps and converters and computers running in this small room with no AC. It was just a recipe for disaster, but God blessed it, and we captured the whole thing successfully, and yeah, learned a lot from that. But it was a special moment for the church, for sure. It was a big step of faith to try to fill an arena, and make a record after that, based on that. And it was crazy.
Wow. Yeah, my wife got a couple shots in the videos. I
Oh
was
yeah.
I was mad because everyone like it was obviously they had purposely, you know, cropped me out.
Yeah, they like
I'm
slow panned you out of the shot.
because we were right up front. Um, Basically, I was like standing at the stage in front of the sub, in front of
Yeah.
James's pedal board,
Oh,
because
nice.
James had got me the tickets, and I'm thinking like, man, I'm gonna make it on this DVD, you know,
Yeah.
and every shot is like it'd get to my wife, she's worshiping, and as soon as you'd see my hand cut.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
But yeah,
Yeah, dude, that was a crazy night. There was one shot I'll never forget on that record because I don't see anything until, like you're watching like the final cut of everything put together, and seeing they had this jib over James. I was like, that is the coolest shot I've ever seen. It's just like so dope. Anyway, it was just him playing like this part, and all the lighting and smoke and everything was so super cool looking. And first time I'd seen like a jib do a cool shot like that. But anyway,
was it when he was just playing by himself for a little while, like for 30
yeah,
seconds? Yeah, I
yeah,
remember that. I have that
it
video.
yeah, it was cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
So
man.
so after that, like, what's the process like after that? You capture all of the content, and then what's next?
Yeah. So the goal of a live record is to really capture the magic of those moments. This, I mean, that's what worship is. It's just moments with God. And so trying to make sure you capture the crowd and the energy, from the actual night of the recording is you only get one shot at it. You can't fake great atmosphere in post. And so making sure you get all that proper is just like a big task for anybody that's going into a live record. And I like to say I've done quite a few live records now, and each one's the same. In the end goal is to make sure these things translate to the listener, and whether they're at home doing the dishes or driving to work or just playing something, they hear it in a Spotify playlist or whatever it is, or watching it on YouTube, that they're able to kind of feel that moment and feel like they're in the room. So mindset wise, I go into this mode of like, well, let's prioritize that. And anything we do, if we do overdubs or any kind of shifts, let's make sure that we're prioritizing that end goal of the listener being able to experience these moments and, create an atmosphere where they feel like, they're taking part in worship. So I guess that's the goal. And mindset wise, I just kind of put it on myself to start editing with all that in mind. I break out all the sessions. The first 12 hours after a live recording, I can't focus until I take everything back. Well, first I back everything up, and I like have a drive that goes with all the gear. If we rented the gear or anything, I basically send it with that in order. So there's always like a physical backup. And then I take the main drives, and then I make a backup and I put that in the safe. So no matter what happens, studio burns down, I have a raw copy of what we captured that night. I can't sleep until that happens. And I've never been burned by it, but the one time I don't do that, I guarantee you something will happen. So that's just kind of my thing, is I do a backup, and then the next day, or sometimes even that night, like I just did a record for Passion, and I mean, it was the fastest turnaround I've ever been a part of, but I'll basically go and I'll break out all of the tracks into separate songs. So, when we're doing a live recording, you're just recording it in a linear, over time. So it's like a 2.5 hour session with 96 tracks. Some things are used on some songs, some things aren't. And so the goal is for me to kind of like take a broad look at everything. If there was any issues in the session, I'll go and fix that. To say like sometimes if you don't get a great setup and rehearsal day where you can get gains dialed in really well, things will change. You put 15,000 people in a room, too, players are going to be more excited. They're going to play a little hotter. So I'm constantly kind of adjusting preamps as the recording's happening. But say if I missed something or something was out of phase, I'll flip it. Because most that's the way you're recording. It's not going to keep phase flip or phase reverse to tape. So I'll go ahead and I'll, audio suite and correct the phase that way. I'll make sure all the crowd mics are labeled properly. So if I'm handing it off to somebody, it makes sense to them. I'll put things in stereo pairs. I'll group things. I'll color code. And then once I create that master template, I'll go ahead and I'll break out the songs, which is basically just highlighting the end of the song before it, meaning like the click, not so like before the last note of that, and then the start of the song after the song I'm going for, to where you hear a key change or something where it's obviously going to roll in. That song will be done by then. And I'll basically consolidate those files and save copy in of all that. So whoever I'm sending it to has a open copy or a isolated copy of just that song. And then we could get to work. But I'll do, after that, I'll take the click track that we recorded to, and I'll make a tempo map off of that in Pro Tools. And then I'll just start maybe like editing, tightening the drums where I need to, going through and mentally getting this was a mess up. Let me see if we have another take from the, we'll typically do a dry recording beforehand. So if there's any like mess ups where we want to keep what we did that night, but there's a couple notes here or there, I can just fly them in. Sometimes I'll playlist the songs. So if we did Elevation, I don't feel like we do the live recordings as a show, so we don't like do songs twice or redo a song at the end of the night. We do kind of have a doomsday lull that I could say that and we can re-record something if we absolutely have to. But the goal is to not do that because that just puts people in the mindset of, it's a recording where we're just trying to have an experience. Kind of takes people out of it for a minute. But I'll just kind of get everything, I don't know, prepped and ready. And so whoever's producing the record can have, I'll also bounce some roughs out pretty quickly. And normally when I'm in a truck, I'll be kind of simultaneously doing a truck reference mix. And I always record the front of house mix as well, in case there's a broadcast and I'm mixing for broadcast. There's different things that happen on the broadcast side versus what's happening in the room. So I typically record front of house and truck mix, and I'll bounce those out and send them off to, I know like our lead pastor, Pastor Steven, he'll want stuff real quick just to relive the moment or just be listening to things. And our worship pastor and worship leaders, sometimes they're like, hey, send me that mix, whatever. So I'll do that. And then we just dig in to start editing, overdubbing anything we really need to. The goal of a live worship record is try to keep as much of it as possible, but sometimes environmental things kind of take that option out of there. Sometimes really just depends on the room and how well prepared everybody is and whether or not we're going to have to do overdubs. But I'll at least get the stems from Ableton. So like when we're recording, I'll record all the multi-track stems that's coming off of Ableton that the band's playing to in their ears and the backing tracks, quote unquote. But I won't keep those stems. I'll basically dump those and pull in actual multi-track stems so I could have independent control of all the elements within the song. And so whoever's going to mix it has independent control, if it's me or somebody else or whatever. So that's really important for me. So you're kind of not bound if something comes out a certain way. And I have some tricks that we do so stuff doesn't bleed through the house that much, Ableton tracks wise. But we might want those tracks actually for the actual album. So I'll put them in afterwards if I need to. But it's important having all those separated for me, for my workflow, what I like.
Are you involved with the video aspect of it too, or are you just doing the audio?
Yeah, no, I don't really handle much video. For There was a season where I was overseeing our worship creative team, and my team handled all the video, but I wasn't ever editing video or anything like that. It was them. Like, we have a really great team of people that handle that, and so yeah, they basically do all the video stuff. I do the audio stuff.
So you get all the audio down and then hand it over to video and they sync it. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so normally I'll feed a couple of things happen. So we'll be locked to LTC. So we'll have a master clock and master time code generator that will feed the recording truck or whatever audio recording rigs. And then all the cameras will also sync to that LTC. And then in theory, it's an easy, just like there's a tool that they use to sync it up real quick. We'll also do a slate as a backup to where we'll put something on a screen and they'll video it. And we'll also do some kind of like old school, like slate, like drumstick or hand clap kind of thing at the start of a recording. But yes, essentially that's what happens. I'll give them reference mixes and they'll start editing to those reference mixes.
That's cool. So what are you doing like week to week at Elevation on Sundays?
Yep. I oversee all of our broadcast audio. So the broadcast mix, for years I was the only one doing it, and then we've kind of raised up a team of guys now, and I oversee that team. So I'm ultimately responsible for the sound of our broadcast mix. Also, pretty recently, I guess last year, I started getting more involved with our oversight of our live sound. We've basically moved all of our sound engineers, even from a live standpoint, to out from the tech department to and underneath the bed of our like worship department. And that's been a cultural shift that we've done that's been like heavy on my heart, mainly because I feel like sound is such an integral part of worship. You can't really have one in the context of how we do church at Elevation. It's very integral. Like we have a big PAs in each room, and it's really important that worship is really for the whole worship experience, but especially for worship, that people hear things properly, the mix is good. And so I've wanted to bring all of our engineers underneath the worship department, so they all kind of dotted line to me, but ultimately the worship leader has the authority over what's happening at that campus from a worship band and sound engineer standpoint. So I oversee that as well, across all of our, really the whole church. And that's kind of like my weekend vibe is the sound. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be in the broadcast room mixing, but I'm trying to kind of step out of just mixing and more into a leadership role. So that, yeah, hope that answers that question on what I do day to day. During the day, it's a million different things. It's in the studio, working on projects, mixing videos for YouTube, doing new demos. My team also handles all of our Ableton multi-tracks, all of the asset management, record label stuff. So it's kind of crazy during the week, and then goes more into like concentrate and focus on church during the weekend.
Do you guys post like your live stream Like, is it there for
Yes.
people to watch after it's done?
Yeah. So you can go to elevationchurch.online
Hmm.
and you can watch on demand. I mean, everything is live. There's no posts, there's no edits. It's pretty vulnerable actually, but we just put it out there. You can watch it on demand starting on Monday, and then it rebroadcasts. So I guess the best way to say it is 9:30 and 11:30 on Sundays. It's live. Then they rebroadcast it at 1:30, 3:30, 5:30, 8:30, and I think 10:30 p.m. And all that is whichever sermon pastor picked from Saturday night or 9:30 or 11:30 will rebroadcast that, and that'll go up. And that's like streaming. You can't hit play and pause and all that. Then Mondays you can start essentially sorry, I'm gonna turn on my do not disturb. I'm getting blown up with all these notifications. Can you hear a notification when it comes on?
Nah.
Oh, cool. It's distracting me. Yeah, so Monday at noon we put out two things. We put out our sermon archive, which is basically just the sermon content, and that is post mixed by someone on our team named Ryan Manette, who's actually posted a video on how he does it, and he's really good at it. I used to do it for years too, but he's taken it. He kills it. He does a great job. That's we call that archive. That goes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, whatever, and that's just the sermon. But the full worship experience on demand, so you can hit play, you can pause it, whatever, is elevationchurch.online. You can watch that all week until the next sermon comes out, or until Sunday morning. That is so like this week is crazy. We've overseeing the engineers. I didn't mix Saturday night. I was working in the studio, and then Sunday we had some shifts happen, and I had to go in and actually mix 9:30 and 11:30 live when I wasn't expected. So it was basically like just run in, mix. I was set up for success though because the team that does it is so dialed. Like we've over the 5 years I've pushed for like certain practices and things to happen, and now it's great in a situation like this weekend where I have to go in and mix because we had to put whoever was mixing on a different desk and fill a hole in a different campus or whatever. Like we're all kind of like live in flexibility. So anyway, but Pastor Stephen actually picked Saturday to broadcast because he felt that was his best sermon, best representation of what he wanted out there. So that's my buddy's mix, guy named Linker. Anyway, so yeah, that you can, to answer your question, I think that was the long-winded version. You can watch the whole worship and everything online whenever you want on our website.
So is every campus set up to stream, or just the main campus?
No, so we have what we call our broadcast campus, and that is where that's the only place we stream from. Pastor Stephen is live, and then we have 17 campuses, physical campuses, and we have what we call point-to-point, where they're receiving normally a song, point-to-point, like the song before the sermon, and the close. Or like sometimes we'll do a sermon climb after his sermon. They're receiving that basically isolated audio and video, and they'll get our click down an isolated channel and our MD, and they'll be able to play in sync with what's happening at our Valentine campus, which is our broadcast campus, in real time. So we lease fiber between the sites, campuses, and they're able to just lock in live with us. And we send 8 channels of audio, and we receive 2 back from every single campus. And that is independent of what's happening on our web stream or our broadcast mix. That's mainly for what, whatever people are watching on Facebook, YouTube, elevationchurch.online, Twitch. We're broadcasting live to all those platforms. So my mix is independent of what's happening between each campus. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like, say Pastor Stephen's preaching at a different campus.
Which we've done that before.
So would the stream be the worship from the broadcast campus, but then Pastor Stephen from the other campus?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah. I mean, 90% of the time he is at our broadcast campus. And so it's a little bit easier to manage. Not that he doesn't like to go, but we just have it best prepped. You know, a big part of our ministry is what we do outside of Sunday, which is, you know, the biggest reach we have is online, and TV, which is still, believe it or not, a really big part of ministry for us. You know, we do national, local, regional TV shows, essentially, which is just a sermon broken up. So we have the best way to capture that stuff at our broadcast campus. And so he'll normally preach from there. And we could just support him the best because we've built the campus for, you know, being able to broadcast well to all the other campuses. It's a little bit more logistically difficult if he's at another campus and we're going to pipe that through Valentine and then broadcast it out. But it's been done before, and, you know, that's what he wants to do. That's what we'll do.
Is he uses a handheld, but do you have like a lapel clipped onto him just in case?
No, we just have so he'll always have two mics with him. So we always have a handheld and then a backup handheld. And then we have we also have a headset and then a backup headset as well. So we're always ready with a backup at all times. And we've had to use it a few times. But it's not a backup on him. It's more of the team that supports him at our broadcast campus. Like, we have certain protocols in place to where when we decide to go to a backup mic, or he's even called for it before if RF was dropping out, which is very rare. But if, you know, the few times, I mean, in 5 years, it's been a handful of times that it's actually happened. But he's called out for it before, and we've just brought it out to him. But it's pretty seamless. Normally, it's so quick that we can cut to another camera, and no one will even notice it, really.
Yeah. And he's not wearing any ears, right?
No, he's not. But we have a pair of wedges on the downstage edge, and underneath his, there's like a little staircase right outside the stage, and we have wedges underneath of those and perforated top or floor, so the sound can go up through that, so he can hear pretty well.
And how do you communicate with him? Is there like a confidence monitor in the back that for him?
If there's like a need or something's going on that he needs to know about while he's preaching, there's a talkback monitor that he can look at, and that has his clock on it, and then also any kind of, you know, scripture reference or whatever.
Okay.
So he doesn't have to stay head down. He can kind of talk to the people and still have that as just a visual reference.
Yeah.
So if anything does happen and we need to get a message to him, that's how we'll do it. It'll just be on that talkback monitor.
I'm trying to remember it because the last time I was there, I wasn't really paying attention so much to the tech stuff.
Right.
Because the number one, the band was on fire, and then he was on fire, you know, and it's just like.
Well, that's good, man. That's the goal of our church, is to we don't want it to be about the tech. We don't want it to be about like the flash or the excellence or whatever. We want it to be about the connection. And I think that, you know, limiting the distraction is part of that.
Yeah, I remember thinking going in, like, keeping mental notes, like, oh, check out what are they using? Go look at all, you know, what kind of cameras are they using? What kind of mic is Pastor Steve? I'm thinking all these things that I kind of want to come away with.
Yeah.
And then I leave and I'm like, not one of those things that I even notice or remember to, you know, take note of.
For sure.
But that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
that is a good thing. That's encouraging. But I can get you all those details whenever you need.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. So you said you did you were doing the passion stuff. Is that the most recent one?
Yeah, yep. So I did that record, recorded that. Um, Sean Moffitt mixed it and crushed it. He's one of my closest friends. He's the man. But Jonathan Smith and Hank Bentley produced it, and John Duke, he was a big part of it too. Like he kind of manages that whole process for Passion and the record label and stuff. But yeah, that was crazy. I think it was like we recorded it. They kind of did a different. I've done one Passion album prior to that, and that was back. It was the Worthy record, like not this past one, but 2 albums ago. It was the last thing they did in the Georgia Dome, and it was my first time ever recording in a stadium. So that was intense for sure. But anyway, this record, they changed it up and wanted to release the album at their Passion conference. So we recorded it ahead of time and then had to obviously have it done in time for them to get it out to the digital platforms and everything for release for the actual conference. So that was crazy. That was a blast though.
And that was at 4 locations, right?
The Passion Conference,
Yeah.
yes, that was amazing. Nick Geiger is a genius, and Taylor, their whole team at Passion, I was just blown away with how smart they are and how well dialed things were. So a few of us from Elevation got to be involved, which was kind of fun. Zach and Nicole. Zach's our technical director at our broadcast location and kind of really technical director for our whole church, really. And Nicole Hambrick, she is our online production director. So she's built the team that pulls off our broadcast, and they're amazing. And they helped out a lot on the Passion online broadcast.
Oh, so were you doing the online broadcast?
No, I was
Oh,
not.
okay.
No, I was just recording. It was kind of like a last minute add-on, honestly. So they wanted to release a version. They basically wanted to. They did the record, and then they wanted to capture these songs again live at the conference. You know, because why not in front of 40,000 people?
Yeah.
Whereas the album was done at their church, more intimate setting, way less people, obviously, and then you have this huge production and all these arenas across the country. So they brought me in to kind of just put up a ton of extra crowd mics, record the band, all the music side. I didn't record any of the sermon, and I didn't have to worry about any mixing or anything. They had a different guy and team that was doing the broadcast mix, so I was able to focus on just making sure head amp levels were good and had good isolation and great crowd mics up, and was able to try to spend more focus capturing the energy of the rooms. And then a very, very fast edit breakout of the songs, that process I talked about earlier. I did that overnight. We had a guy in Nashville, and Jacob, he basically edited. I broke out the files, sent it to him. He took them, edited them overnight. Basically just like tuning and tightening up the drums a bit. And then Sean mixed it.
Jacob Arnold?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, he's the man. He's an amazing drummer and great producer, mixer, engineer, all those things. He slays. And then Sean mixed it in like an hour, and it was up by like 2 p.m. the next day on Vimeo and YouTube and stuff. So that was just crazy, insane.
Yeah, that's a nuts turnaround. So
Yeah.
basically, like when this stuff is done, like you start, like
Yeah,
you
it's
don't
weird.
sleep at all.
It's weird because it's so you're exhausted mentally, but you're so amped that you just successfully captured this record or project or whatever. You're just stoked to get on, dive right in. Um, and part of it too, honestly, is I just want to quality control and make sure I actually got what I think I got, and at least mentally, like tell myself it's okay to rest now. So that's why I kind of go to work right after we capture. Um, but with the passion thing, that was just so fast. It's crazy. I've done a lot of live records. I mean, a lot, and that was the fastest thing I've ever been a part of. It was amazing.
Like, did you
But
sleep that night?
at the conference,
Yeah.
so I think I was done my part at like 2 a.m. and our call time was at 5 a.m. the next day. And so I just walked to the hotel. The hotel was close. Um, I got done at 2, walked to the hotel, slept for a couple hours, took a shower, and came back, kind of thing. Like it was very, very quick. Um, and that schedule lasted for 3 or 4 days. Like it was pretty intense. And by the end of it, I just remember like, man, I just need to get on this plane and pass out. And so that's what I did.
Man. So, which location were you at?
I was at the main location, State Farm Arena.
Okay.
So I was recording. They had teams recording at every arena, doing like basic multi tracks. But I brought in way more crowd mics, and like I said, I had an isolated split, so I could do everything. And I was just focused on just the music essentially. So, but yeah, I was at the main one.
That was the one where like Christian and Brian Carl were at that one, right?
Um, yeah, I forget. I don't know who was at it. It's all a blur right now.
Because I know because Sean Curran and like James Duke were at the other Georgia location, right?
Well, no. So what's crazy is they all played at that. So all of so Cody Carnes, Kerry Jobe, um, Crowder, Mosaic, Passion. It started off the first night. Actual Passion band was at State Farm, and then the next morning, I think Crowder was there, and then Kerry and Cody that night, and then the next day, I don't I don't even know who was there. Sean Curran was there the next day. So it was everybody played at uh, every spot, every venue. So there's
Okay.
4 venues. So they were literally flying them. They'd finish a set, have their backline pieces taken off stage, and they'd jump in a van, go to the airport, and fly private to the next venue. Because you can't do commercial with that kind of tight schedule. Like, so they had to orchestrate so many logistics and making sure everybody could be at every venue.
That's
So
crazy.
they just basically rotated. So I got to record everybody at least once.
You stayed put.
I stayed put. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was following everybody on social media like what, and I was like so like, what is going on? People are in different places and like who's playing with who, like
I know. Yeah, I can imagine how crazy that looked, just from afar, because they would keep breaking to like the split screen where they would have all 4 plus online, like on the split screen kind of thing, and it was just insane to see like, well, I just record, like they were just here for the morning session, and now it's the afternoon session, and they're either across town in the other Atlanta one or in Dallas or DC. Like it was insane.
wow. And how about the song is it called Step Into the Light?
Yeah, the one Sean just released.
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
was the deal with that? Because I know it originally wasn't on the album, right? And then a ton of people were requesting that song.
Yeah, so he recorded it live at Passion. So that's there's the track that's essentially one of the reasons that I was just there recording all that stuff. So you never know what's going to happen. And they just wanted to make sure we got it all. So we recorded it
That's cool.
and they put it out. Yeah. It's awesome.
I mean, a ton of people have been like texting me, "Have you heard this song?" Like sending me links. I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard it."
Dude, he's amazing. And I got to meet him and kind of spend a little bit of time with him when we cut their record, like the actual album. And he's just like the nicest dude ever. Like, just stoked, makes amazing music. And I was actually, I met him when he was in Bellarive a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I actually reminded him of that. Of course he didn't know, like he didn't remember that, but yeah, I've been a fan of him for a while. He's just a really gifted worship leader in general.
I remember there was a couple months where I thought, man, the guy from Bellarive and the Passion guy just sounds so similar. And then it dawned on me, like, wait, it might be the same guy.
Well, the first record I did with them, I think, was his first time doing anything with Passion. I mean, I could be wrong on that. I don't know for sure, but that was at least the first time I saw him with Passion and was like, wait a minute, that's that guy. So I didn't know what was going on or what. I thought Bellarive was still a thing at that point.
Yeah.
But I was wrong.
Yeah. It's hard to miss his voice. Like, it's pretty unique.
Yeah, for sure. He has a unique style and texture for sure. Same thing with Mac. Like like when Mac Brock's leading worship, he kind of has a way he does it that I don't think anybody else does that, or at least doesn't do it to that level. It's very interesting. Each worship leader at Chris Brown's different than Mac, or different than Tiffany, different than Jane, or whoever. They're all bring such different kind of gifts to leading worship.
So did you were you a part of Mac's recent album?
Yeah, so I actually got to record some vocals for it, and I mixed the video version of Greater Things. He did this really awesome video in a garage, and he didn't want to use the studio. He wanted it to be like an actual performance, so I got to mix that. And I think I recorded vocals for 2 or 3 songs. But yeah, so he still lives in Charlotte, and so we hang out pretty regularly. And he's just like, I don't know, him and Meredith are the best of the best. Like, such great people. They're as genuine and as true as it gets, for sure. And so he's just somebody I just love being around, love working with, love doing life with. He kills it. So when he asked me to do a couple things for his record, it was like a no-brainer to like be involved however I could help.
Yeah, I was we had him on the podcast when that came out, and I was surprised when I talked to him because, number one, I just assumed he was like a studio gear nerd.
Dude.
And I was asking him stuff, and he's like, I don't know. I don't care. I just, whatever. And I was like, I just had this kind of mental picture of him being this like a buff with like, all the pre's, his compressors, his mics, and everything. He was like, I don't, whatever sounds good. And so like I had like a list of questions I was going to ask him, and I was like, oh, okay. I can't ask you any of those, because I was I wanted to know like what mic did he use, what pre's was he, what does he like for, is he using outboard compression, whatever. And I was ready to go into that with him, and he was like, I don't know.
Dude, that's so funny because I'm the gearhead, he's not. So in the studio, it'll always be like, he's like, hey, I just need to track this real quick, and I'm like, all right, let me set this up, and give me 30 minutes or whatever. And he's like, no, I mean, I just want to record. Like, what's the simplest thing? And that he actually taught me a lot about not getting in the way. I think a lot of guys coming up let gear get in the way of what, especially in the worship world, what God's trying to do in the moment. And sometimes you just got to strip all that crap out and be like, hey, let's just be in this moment, forget these distractions, and just use the tools to work for us, not us kind of like working our way around to use these tools because they're cool or expensive or whatever. A lot of people get that wrong, and I think that's something I get a lot of questions about, just even on Instagram, social media. Oh, what gear do you use for your broadcast mix? How do you make a live album? How much do I have to spend for this? And I'm like, hey, whatever your budget is, that's your budget. So try to be smart. Don't worry about it so much. Just try to improve incrementally as you can. And sometimes I get probably the number one question I get is about broadcast mixing and about drum samples in a broadcast mix, and about using like what desk I use. And I'm like, hey, and there's these, tech directors or worship leaders that are forced to have to figure out how to make a broadcast mix sound like Elevation or whatever. And they're asking me about drum samples. And I'm like, well, what's your setup? Like, why do you need drum samples again for a live broadcast mix? That's just like, to me, that's just creating more headache than you need. Like, it's way simpler than that. Just get great tones and have a great consistent drummer, and you'll be halfway there. I mean, I don't use a snare sample in my broadcast mix or tom samples, and everybody sees triggers on the drums at Elevation, and they go, oh man, what are you using slate samples live? And I'm like, no, they're used for gates to trigger. They're used to literally trigger the gates on the toms, so I don't have to think about it, and I can move on to something else, like making sure I push up the guitar to the right part of the song. So mindset wise, I'm like, you're thinking way too technical, way too detailed right now. Just take a step back. Broadcast mixing is all about translating what's happening in the room to people that are watching online, that, they might be in their kitchen or, in their living room and watching over Apple TV and kids running around. It's important for me to do my job to just get things to translate so they can feel that energy even in the chaos of whatever is happening around them. So no one cares about drum samples. And so I try to kind of push that myth out, or just get people thinking about what your job as an engineer is to do, is to just translate the magic that's happening in front of you, the simplest, fastest, most efficient way possible, to those that are on the other end, whether it be an album or whatever. Mac needing to record something like we were talking about, or a church broadcast mix, or a songwriting session that's happening in the moment, and your job is to just kind of capture the magic that's happening so they can work on it later or whatever, and just stay out of the daggone way. No one cares if a hit song was recorded on a $300 SM7B or a $10,000 U47. The end listener on K-Love does not care at all about that. Or the person listening on AirPods during a jog while you're broadcasting your church's mix. They don't care about what gear you have in front of you. All they care about is, am I able to hear that message or feel that energy of that worship experience or whatever. So, but that being said, I'm a major gearhead, and I love all the details, and I love all the gear. So I could talk about that forever.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've seen that conversation at least 3 times in the last week about drum samples, like especially Bethel. Everybody's asking what snare sample are they using for their snare,
Yeah. So I'm good friends with both Luke and Chris over at Bethel. Chris, I don't think is there anymore, but Luke oversees their online broadcast mix. and he literally made an amazing video about every single detail. So people just need to go watch that video and your questions will be answered. And I've seen him on chats and threads and stuff just even be like, hey, I already made a video about it. I'm not going to explain it again. Just go watch this. I think, I mean, to me, his mix slays. Like, it's the best. It doesn't, and I actually went out to Bethel and hung out with him, and we talked about the mix and the workflow and stuff. And I would love to be able to mix the way he does. With our workflow and the way we do online church, I'm not able to do that just because of all the send and receive we have to do. You know, we can't have that much delay, and we have basically, like, for every campus we have a campus pastor. Well, for online we have multiple online hosts, is what we call them, and we do pre and post show, and sometimes we'll go to 2 or 3 or 4 locations and be synced up, and they're all using my feed, so I can't have any delay in that, because that's delaying how they're hearing things and the way they're able to communicate back. So it gets pretty complicated for us. So we're on an actual digital console, and I'm mixing with faders mostly. I do use some plugins, some Waves plugins, and it works great. I think we get a pretty decent result, and I think the guys that are mixing when I'm not mixing, I think they get a good result, and we're building a team off of that. It's a very streamlined process. And then Luke at Bethel, I mean, mix sounds so good. But it takes a lot of skill to get something to that level. There's people that even get his template or samples or whatever, and you know, they're not Bethel. Your church is not Bethel music, not those musicians, so you're not going to sound exactly like they sound, and that could be a hard realization sometimes. But you also have to put in perspective. You know, a lot of churches are using volunteer musicians, you know, and they might not be 100% pro and might not know how to blend together acoustically like other churches, but it's all in how much you put into it. You know, that's not an excuse. That's like, all right, well, you have things to focus on and work on. Your broadcast mix, your front of house mix, your ear mix, all those things will get incrementally better the more practice and time you put into refining, you know, the sound of the source, and then, you know, the player, so on and so forth. So the tone, I mean, all those things play so much into it. But I think Bethel takes the cake for me on, like, the best of all those worlds coming together. Their broadcast mix sounds amazing. But I'm coming for them.
One thing I really like about Elevations, the live and the album stuff, is the toms, the floor toms. Like,
yeah, you do.
What'd you say?
I said, yeah, you do.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I obsess over them, honestly.
Can you go into detail about that?
Yeah, it's no secret. I actually, I did a post, the last record we did, about the drums and the whole setup, and I mean, there's no secrets. So for our live week to week, we use a DW Performer kit. It's just maple classic DW kit. It's a 12 and 16 inch tom and 22 inch kick, and I'm using Sennheiser 904s on the toms, and I'm using these little D-drum triggers to help me trigger the gates. Super fast attack, kind of like I just listen for the release. And with our music, it's normally typically set it and forget it threshold. But I mean, there's not much secret. Scooped out a ton of 300, 3 to 500 um, boost a little bit of the good stuff, and it's not. I do use parallel compression, so that's part of our drum sound in general. But then for our albums, it all that's been the same the last 4 albums. It's been a DW Collector Series maple kit with a 13, 16, and 18-inch toms. And unconventional thought is I use 414s on the 4 toms, the 16 and 18. And I use the newer 414s because they handle SPL better than the old school stuff. And I'll put a pad on them, and they get to me. And I shot out probably 20 different mic and tom combinations with me and my team and both of our drummers, our main platform drummers, Luke and Vincent. And we shot those out, and man, it was amazing. Like the difference and how glaringly well the 414 won, which I was kind of hoping it would, but it was a blind test. Like, honestly, I literally recorded everything, then had the guys no EQ or anything, had the whole team come back in here, and I just played them back. I mean, we shot out every mic you could think of, every typical usual suspect on the toms, and yeah, 414s won. But the 904s were very close second, but I think the 414, the low extension you get from that condenser mic is just great, and the transient response you get off of the, we're pretty famous, worship in general, but elevation, it's kind of like we do a lot of floor tom rods, so you're just like 16th note floor tom constant, and it's very dynamic, so lots of highs and lows, and so those get really great transient response for that. It allows me to kind of hear it great, and the bleed isn't so bad depending on which model 414 you get.
So what heads do you like? How are you tuning your heads? Like, what heads are you using? Are you
Yep.
taping them or?
Maybe a little bit of moon gel, but for the most part they're coated emperors and clear ambassadors, Remo heads, on all, at least when we do a recording. On tour sometimes we use Evans, but I typically like a coated on the top and a clear on the resonant.
And that's
And
it. Just
that's
that's
it,
just
man.
standard.
Yeah, it's just simple. It's just works for us. I don't know.
Huh. Yeah, I love
Matt,
those performers. Every time somebody asks me like, what kit should my church get, I say performer, the DW performer.
dude, they're amazing for the price. You're looking at a couple grand for a 5-piece kit. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really great deal. I also love like the satin finish. So we have the tobacco stain. Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Remo heads are better to me. I don't know. We have our own drummer. Like, I mean, we'll argue back and forth, and depends on what you're going for and who's playing. But for the most part, I found them to be the most consistent and last the longest.
Mm-hmm.
We have some heavy hitters, like Luke beats the crap out of some drum heads, and I have found personally that they just last way longer.
Yeah. I have a collectors in my studio, and then I got a performer at my church.
Cool.
And I swear sometimes I think the performer sounds a little bit better.
It's weird, man.
It kind of bugs me sometimes.
So this might sound dumb, but for me, the performer is easier to get in tune and sound really good, right? Like, you can get it sounding good faster. The collectors is a little bit more work,
Yeah.
but once it's dialed, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, the tone of it is so good. And I'm all about the like low end extension. So we tune our toms to certain notes, and it's all about getting, consistently across all of our songs, it'll be close to the tonic and it'll sound like you tuned it for the key of the song. And so we try to make like the 18-inch be as close to the one as possible. Just so, typically when you're hitting an 18-inch, you're doing a big fill and you're hitting it on the one and you want it to sound huge. So
Yeah.
I don't know. The Collector's series just sound amazing once you get them dialed in.
Yeah.
And the intervals in between them sound really good. So overall, I think it's my favorite. But the Performer, again, very close second. And honestly, if I had to pick one or the other for a live setting and needing to be quick, I would probably go Performer just because it's the best bang for the buck. It sounds really good. Great value. I don't know. To each his own.
I think I got mine, or I got the Performer on Black Friday at like 20% off, and it ended up being like $1,300 for the kit.
I mean, that's ridiculous. That's amazing.
And I think that's the part that hurts me, knowing how much my collector's was, like.
Yeah, it's better to not think about it, man.
But yeah, I mean, people always ask, and not to bash any of the drum companies like the boutique stuff, but a lot of churches lately have been trying to get all those boutique kits, and I'm like, man, just get a Performer. Like, it's cheaper actually.
Dude, I'm with you, and that's what I recommend to churches whenever I get hit up with that question, just because I think it's readily available. Typically, any big city will have a shop or two with a couple of them in there. You can get it in a pinch if you need. I don't know. They're everywhere. Great value. It's the DW name, the brand. I don't know. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
The boutique stuff is amazing in the right hands. When you get guys that really know what they're doing, know their tone, know how to play to that kit, it's like unbeatable for sure.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But for your average church that, week to week, they might have different guys playing on the kit. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily justifiable because, I don't know. The paying 4 times the amount for a drum kit, just because it's a bigger name, might not be the best smart for the budget overall, or best use of dollars for that church.
So you're tuning the drums per the tonic per song, like you're changing it?
No, we never change it per song, but we have a lot of songs in C. So C, C sharp, B flat. So I would say most of our like ballad stuff is kind of within that range, like 2 or 3 notes. And so we'll tune our toms. 18-inch isn't really used all the time, so that might be like for massive impact. We don't tune it specifically to the note. It just kind of resonates within kind of those notes in general. So we'll do it more kind of by ear to what just kind of sounds good. And then sometimes we'll use a tune bot, those little tune bot things you can put on them, and that'll read like the tension and the frequency response across each lug. And so we'll tune everything to a certain number across all the lugs, top and bottom, and we'll get like a really good bass. Typically, where I like the tone is going to be around like a C or B flat on the 16 or 18. It just happens to be that some of our ballad worship songs are in those keys. So it's not like we're in the middle of a live recording, we say, all right, we did one song, let's retune the drum kit to this next song. It just kind of happens to resonate within the keys of those songs perfectly. I don't know. It's way less complicated than I'm probably making it sound. We just tune it so it's like low and proud, sounds awesome and heavy, and resonates really well. That's what we tune it to. But it's important also with all the tom rides that we do to have enough attack So you just have to be careful. Um, my biggest secret is that I've used Matt Payne, who is a amazing musical director, drum tech on our last few albums. He's come out and been our drum tech for the recordings, and that was a conscious decision I pushed for. I think Here's in Heaven was the first thing we did, and for a drummer that, so like the first recording, my goal was to get the drummer not having to focus on Ableton or tuning their drums, mainly from a, because going into a record, it holds a certain amount of weight. It can get in their heads. They can overthink it. They can switch out heads too soon or not enough. And I don't want them having to think about that. I want them to just think about the moment and play to what the record needs. And so having a dedicated person to kind of watch the drums and, in the middle of rehearsals, jump up there when everybody's on a break or whatever and switch out some heads or tweak the tuning. That's like an invaluable tool for me. It takes the drummer out of thinking about it. It takes the weight off of them. It puts a certain amount of trust in the team vibe. It puts somebody that's more focused on that. And honestly, he's an expert at it. So it's just like extremely helpful having him around. He doesn't even drum tech anymore, but somehow I talk him into helping us out every time it's time for us to do a record, just because he's amazing at it.
What snare are you guys using?
Black Beauty,
Okay.
always and forever.
I've assumed that, but
It's the snare. Just get that.
6.5.
6.5 by 14.
Okay.
And I would say, I don't know, man. It's the best snare for the money. That's the most consistent across I don't know. For me, it works. I love Black Beauty. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased now, but I just feel like it's the best.
Yeah, I have one. Which lugs do you prefer is the question.
So that is the debate that never ends around here. I'm actually in the market for one for the studio. I just bought a new studio drum kit. We've never had a drum kit for the studio, just studio. It's always been like at a campus and we bring it in, or we rent in, or have a drummer bring in their own kit, that kind of thing. So we're going to buy some. I'm a really big fan of the one Vincent has. He's one of our drummers here and on our team here. He has the brass hardware on it, and it just, I don't know. I forget what are the different options there's like a number of options you can get.
There's like the tube lugs, and then there's like the standard kind of 70s looking, almost like diamond looking lugs.
Yep. He has the tube ones, I believe.
Yeah, that's what mine is. I like the way it looks.
Yeah, it looks awesome. Looks kind of like old school. It looks kind of expensive. Yeah. I don't know. I like it. But yeah, Black Beauty forever.
I had somebody tell me that the other lugs sound better. I was like, okay, whatever.
Well, I don't know. I think it's just a style thing. I love the brass look though. I think that looks slick on top of the metal body of it. I don't know. The Black Beauty just is great drum. I think you can't really go wrong with any of the combination lugs or whatever.
Yeah. Do you guys use the standard hoops or do you put the die cast?
Good question. I know Vincent's is different than the one we have at church, and he cares enough about his hoops that he switches out the drum. But I don't know that I care.
Yeah.
That much. At that point, I'm just kind of like, hey, just hit consistent. That's what I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drums, man. That's what everybody obsesses over in the recording world. but it's the most fun thing to record. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I've literally been on sessions where I've heard people say like, "Yeah, we're going for the elevation tom thing." These like CCM records, you know.
Dude, elevation tom thing is crazy. I have some friends that call us Tomovation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's
which
funny that y'all are aware of it.
yeah, I mean it's whatever. It's a thing. It's a cultural like I feel like worship world. You have to have at least two floor toms, so you're not doing it right. Except that's just the joke because we actually only have one, and people think, and it's just a 16. It's not an 18. So week to week on the weekends we just have a 12 and a 16. But yeah, for studio projects and live records, I always like to have a 16 and an 18. But honestly, maybe two pieces of moon gel and really good tuning. That's it. That large diaphragm condenser to get that attack and low end extension, and then a couple EQ tricks. Simple, done.
Mm.
But it has taken me a lot of live albums to figure it out, for sure.